Hello, welcome to the Brain Scrub. My name's Glenn Sollers, your host. Thanks for tuning into today's episode. The episode is based on a number of different things that have hit me over the last week. And it was a reminder that we only have one life. That's it. And it's important to make the most of that life, to live our best life. And sadly, I've been witness to a good friend who was just recently in a head-on collision, and thankfully he's alive today. Had a lovely chat with him this morning, and he's recovering. It's going to take some time. Then I have another friend who has possible cancer, then another one who is going through some blackouts. And they're now going through tests, and I know that all too well because I blacked out a number of years ago. It was a scary situation, and I'll get more into that. However, as one gets older, as I am now, 55, things like this start happening where people are getting diseases, or they're challenged with something, or there's physical ailments that are going on. And it's a real reminder to me on how valuable this life is, and to figuring out how can I live the best life possible because of the finite amount of time we have, but also the importance of letting go of anger, resentment, because all that can shorten our life. And if we are resentful of people, if we are upset with people, if we have relationship issues with others that are unresolved, but we still talk about, it can eat away at us, and it can take us away from being in a state of contentment, peace of mind, gratitude, positivity, all these different things. So deal with your shit ultimately. And I'm on a journey of dealing with my shit over time. and just more and more comes like, oh my gosh. So sadly, many of us do hang on to shit. And then one day something happens, possibly, and the consequences of hanging on to shit really unfold versus figuring it out and, again, dealing with it. So I want to go back to me blacking out. This was years ago, probably around 12 years ago. I was walking down the street after a very stressful day, doing the things that I normally do, which is people pleasing and saying yes to things and not asserting myself effectively, taking too much on, trying too hard, all these different things that Glenn does. And also that morning, I had an excessive amount of coffee. I worked out, didn't have a lot of water. So I'm sure there's many physiological things going on with me as well. And then, wow, I just remember wobbling, and that's it. And then I woke up in an ambulance and somebody looking down at me, and I went through all the tests and everything, and they couldn't find anything wrong with me at all. But then I went to a chiropractor, and the chiropractor said this to me, that we can only handle so much in our system. Eventually, if we keep on taking things on or causing ourselves stress, our body's eventually going to shut us down. It's going to say, you know what, stop. I'm going to stop you before you do harm. And it's kind of like a fuse panel at home. Like a circuit breaker will go off when there's an overload there to protect the house. And our spine and our nervous system may do the same things to us. So when I think about, and this is only a possible reason, when people do faint or have high anxiety or blackouts or different things like that, there may be an element of taking too much on or putting too much pressure on ourselves. And it's, again, the body's way of saying stop. Now, that's not all cases. However, in my opinion, I believe that for me was the case as a result of me starting to let go of things, doing more analysis about myself. Life's become easier. Now, this is very difficult to do in terms of taking less on, because we live in a society where we're taking more and more on. And we complain about how busy we are, but we're doing it to ourselves in a lot of cases, being on social media, fear of missing out, the news, watching what's going on in the United States, political discourse, hatred, us versus them, media. We're inundated with information. And then we work, and then we worry, and then no wonder we get into these situations. And what I came to realize recently is, does it all really matter? Does it really matter? The Prime Minister of Canada has said this several times, and that is, there's a lot to be concerned about. There's things we can and cannot do. What is within our control? What can we deal with? And that stuff matters. Our health, our relationships, money, that I can do something about. But I can't do anything about actions in the United States. I can't do anything about conflicts in other countries. I can't do anything about the environment to a certain extent. These are things that are just happening. For me, this negativity has compounded over the years, and now there's doom scrolling, watching YouTube videos. I was watching late night shows to get a chuckle out of what's going on with Trump in the United States. And talking about this chaos with other people, it just breeds more and more negativity, more and more anger, dissatisfaction. I need to stop. I need to stop. And fill my space with things I can control. Years ago, as part of my mission to relax more, I bought what is called a Muse headset, and by no means are they paying me to say this. Muse is a device you put on your head, and it wraps around your ears, and then it monitors your brain waves. There's an app that you put on your phone, you put on your headset, and then it starts you into a meditation, and there's different meditations you can do. I love the rainfall one. And as you're listening to the rainfall, when your brain calms down, so does the rain. And eventually, when it's really calm, you can hear birds tweeting. So the goal is to get a calm mind with birds tweeting, not a neutral mind, not an active mind. And it allows one to really focus in on nothing other than your body. And being with your body, being with yourself, not being with all those thoughts that go on. This is a practice, though. And I find myself sometimes getting tangled into loops and not actually clearing my mind. And it's such a great tool to use to get back to this, back to our worry-free mind, if you will. And it's taking practice. But the other day, for whatever reason, my body, after I was focusing in on my sensations, and a lot of it's in my neck and my shoulders, something came up for me. So my silence allowed my body to share, if you will. I know this might sound a bit woo-woo, but it said, Glenn, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. I started noticing severe body sensations. I was almost about to cry. I was almost in agony. And I took off my headset and I just sat with that. And I started realizing how me trying to matter has a huge ripple effect in my life. This leads to how I judge myself, how I am around other people, because I feel that their thoughts of me must matter to me. And I get where that comes from. It comes from my childhood, when I had to try harder, when I had to please people, when I had to fix situations, where I had to be hyper vigilant. I get where it comes from, but I didn't realize how much it was impacting my life in a negative way. That what you're thinking, what you're doing matters to me. How you're feeling about me matters to me. So that leads to more and more effort, more and more trying, more and more questioning. How am I showing up? And do I need to do more? Do I need to do less? I just said this. Is that a good thing? Is that a bad thing? How are they feeling about this? It doesn't matter. Yes, it doesn't mean I'm not responsible for what I say or what I do, because my actions can have a negative impact on others. But if I have this mentality of it doesn't matter, it can set me free. And that evening we had friends over for dinner, and I noticed I was remarkably calm. I was a way better listener. I was able to tune into what was going on. I was content. I wasn't anxious at all, or normally I feel a bit of that. I was just being me in a healthy way where I wasn't being self-critical or questioning what people were saying or questioning how I was being. It was just me. And I told my wife how excited I was about this. I said, you know what, I came up with it doesn't matter. And she said, okay, because she's used to me doing self-awareness work. And I noticed I was making it matter. I was like, no, I want you to acknowledge me and let me know, wow, that's great, Glenn. Tell me more about that. And then I caught myself. I said, oh my gosh, they're making it matter again, where it doesn't really matter. If she doesn't respond, that's okay. It's okay. She doesn't have to take that on. So I was laughing out loud and laughing to myself that I had to try to prove to her and show her, look at that. I did something and it matters. And no, I want to achieve being void of having nothing to prove, because I try too hard and it's a learned behavior. And I've done well in my life. Yes, I have issues that have that I'm still working through. I don't have my son in my life. Like, there's things I'm still working towards. However, in the grand scheme of things, it is my life. It doesn't all matter. We all have our own lives, and making the most of that is so important. So with that all in mind, the self-judgments and judging others, I want to add a bit more to this segment just around a Carl Jung video I watched around some of his practices and theories and the importance of self-management, self-compassion, compassion for others, and how that can lead to a much more peaceful life, letting go of resentment and anger. And I teach a lot of this stuff, but it was again a great reminder for me around relationships and how to reduce anger and resentment. Because sometimes we live in this judging others. They're this way, they're that way. And that breaks us apart from relationships. And it causes emotional reactions. It causes upsets, not just within us, but within other people. And it doesn't create a peaceful environment. So there's 3 things that we can essentially do when somebody upsets us or when we're angry with somebody. First of all, I can set boundaries with them. And I had to do this with my wife, because I found when I was sharing things with her, she would say things to me that were hurtful and upset me. And I had to let her know, this is unacceptable to me. This is a no-go in our relationship, because I can't live with that. There's things in our relationships that if you had to live with that day in and day out, would that actually be a positive thing? Would it be a neutral thing? Or would it just be negative thing and just bring things down further and further because you're hanging on to that resentment and anger? So that's number 1, is to set boundaries with people. How do we work together? How do we want to communicate? What is it that I do that upsets you? How can I communicate with you more effectively? These are some questions to ask. In how do we work together as a team so that we can move forward in the right direction? One thing we did around this, around boundary setting, is we re-looked at the love languages, which is an amazing book to read. And my love language is physical touch and hers is affirmation. But the way I was affirming her was not the right way of affirming her. So I read a bit about it, and then I've learned, okay, well, this is what I need to do differently when I'm affirming her. And she knows what I need in terms of physical touch. Number 2 is I can just let go and say, you know what? I'm willing to let go of your behaviors. I'm making it mean too much for me. It's not a big deal. You're just doing what you're doing. You're being what you're being. And you know what? It's not going to have a negative impact on my life as long as I just let go of it. Can't hang on to it. And the last thing, which I want to get into in this episode, is using these moments, these behaviors, as a growth and development tool around building that awareness so that I can figure out what can I do differently? What can I learn from this? How can I be freer from these behaviors that currently trigger me, which takes some courage to look at. But ultimately, if we can understand everything that gets us upset, that triggers an emotion in a negative way, we're better able to work with that in the future. So how is this all done? Well, the first thing I want to talk about that they talked about in this video is judgment management. And that is when somebody has a behavior, you notice an emotional reaction, and emotions are anger, disgust, sadness, joy, fear, excitement, is to label what is the behavior that you're seeing in that other person using facts, not your interpretation. So if they are yelling at you, to change that to when somebody raises their voice above their normal level and uses the F word. Another thing for me is when somebody pushes me away when I hug them. Now, first of all, that's the number one. The next one is to say to yourself, I obviously get triggered for this for a reason. Do I do the same behavior? And this ties into what's called you spot it, you got it. If you see something in somebody else that upsets you, chances are you do the same thing yourself. If you see something in somebody else that you really love, chances are that's within you as well. So this takes a bit of digging deeper to think about, have I done this? Do I still do this? Do I do it with different people? Because we're not completely innocent. And this is called projection, when we start projecting our own behaviors onto other people and saying they're the bad ones versus looking at ourselves and saying, well, do I do this sometimes? And sometimes maybe I just even envy a behavior that they're doing and I can't believe they're getting away with it. I wish I could do that. And that can lead to these judgments as well. But by doing that, now I can be in a position of what is this going to teach me about what I should do? And from there, I can say, okay, well, the next time this person does it, this is what I need to do differently. When they push me away, just maybe say, you know what, that's fine. Maybe they're just not ready to hold on to me right now. And now I know that for me, a core language is mattering and it doesn't matter. Then I can just say, you know what, I'm not going to take that on personally. I still matter. That's part of my identity that I need to recreate is I matter. And therefore, if somebody pushes me away, it's not a big deal because I matter. Another tool they talked about in this is called projection reversal. So for example, if somebody's attacking you, like using the F word, what quality do they have that's creating that, this attacking? And for me, the person that I'm considering is defensiveness. They might have been struggling with that for a while. And then to consider what might they be struggling with? What am I struggling with that has that quality? And if I consider them, I can understand why they're doing that. It gives me compassion. So I can start thinking about, I wonder why they've learned that behavior. And you know what? Do I do that behavior sometimes? Yeah, I do. It comes from not feeling heard, not feeling understood, not feeling valued, that nobody's willing to listen to me, that I need to try harder, and what I can do is never good enough. So then we exercise compassion for the other person, but we're also exercising self-compassion. And then to think about what pain or fear might be driving that attack on me. And maybe it's because I'm making them feel that way, because I'm pointing out their faults and not affirming what's great about them. And I'm just being their parents likely. And I'm doing the exact same thing their parents did. But you know what? In the grand scheme of things, it's not about me. It's about how I'm showing up in the moment. But really, this is their stuff to deal with. Now, this can help us grow. And sometimes when we do this type of analysis, we can start unlocking some of our shadows and converting those into strengths. We all have shadows, things that we suppress within us that we're not willing to look at, where those evil sides of us that sometimes rear their ugly head, and sometimes these interactions bring those up if we're willing to take a step back and say, you know what, I do the same thing. And that's the key part here, is having that self-compassion. So with all this in life is to consider, what can I learn from other people? When I'm reacting to them, what are they teaching me about me? So for me, what I'm learning is that a lot of my behaviors are there because I want to matter. And it doesn't matter, really. It doesn't matter. I don't need to try that hard. Back then, I had to fit into a system when I was a kid, a school system, a parental dynamic. I had to do something to matter in that system. However, I am free of that system now, and I'm now in strong relationships. But if I continue to try too hard to matter in those relationships, it can be a big stressor, cause anxiety, not just in me, but in other people, and create anger and resentment. When these happen, so what is it teaching about me? What weakness might it be exposing that I need to really strengthen? And that is self-confidence, self-assurance. It is contentment, peace, that I've, for 55 years, tried really hard. And I've been in a very interesting life situation for much of my life. And it took hypervigilance. It took being aware of my surroundings. It took me advocating all these different things. And to strengthen that, I just need to relax. And now, at my age, let go of that, because it's just causing me physical issues. It doesn't matter. The gift in all this, everybody, is when we're in relations and people trigger us, to look at it as an opportunity of growth and development, that they are in a way forcing you to confront something that you haven't confronted yet, so you can be freer of the shackles that we put on ourselves based on our life experiences, our identity, our values, and become free of that. This all leads to relationships where there's greater compassion. There's an ability to listen. There's an ability to be with somebody in the moment, to not worry, to not fear. Of course, we need to fear certain things, but sometimes we fear needlessly and create a story about situations, and we don't know if it's true or not. But it allows us to be grounded, and in fact, creates a stronger family unit, community unit, and allows us to focus on what really matters. Our life, our health, our loved ones, peace of mind, and living our dreams. Folks, thanks for listening.